Hi, this is Daniela Krohn for Rutgers University, and I'm going to present my final project for wind band literature. So let me go ahead and go to share screen and pull up my project. All right, so I'm going to start with some general notes about programming. So it kind of typically for all three programs that I did, I went for starting with a fanfare or a march for each program as they are traditionally used for opening a concert program. Kind of a way to draw the audience's attention in. And these are things we sort of read about throughout the course, so I wanted to kind of stick to that standard. The opening number does not necessarily need to be a complex piece. I kind of think of it as you should consider using it, not just as your concert opener, but as a warm up in rehearsals. And, so it's the piece that gets the band started with what they need to do to get into those more complicated or complex pieces of music that we want it to work on. In some instances, starting with a period piece, like an early piece of music, was another route I went to sort of get the program going, sort of to also include that historical aspect into the class with our different periods of music history. And then I always kind of like to end with a familiar piece or something high energy, full of excitement to keep the audience's attention right until the very end, but also the students' attention. Okay. So kind of just some elementary programming considerations. I've been teaching elementary. This is my 7th year teaching elementary instrumental music. So this is sort of where I guess my strength. For elementary band, I would not go past grade 1. I would not jump into that 1.5 territory if possible. That's just my opinion. Maybe you've got a group who can handle it. I'd stay in grade 1 maximum. Probably comfy zone is going to be grade half, 1/2, depending on your group. The big thing I had to keep, you've got to keep in mind is the stamina of your musicians. Most of these kids, they're meeting once a week for 30-minute lessons. So we're going from playing 16 measures, in their method books, essential elements, so they get for playing my drumsticks on top of timpani. Shouldn't do that. But anyway, so they go from playing something that's 16 measures in their book to all of a sudden we're quadrupling the amount of measures that they're working with. And now we're at 50 measures songs. All right. So the big thing was stamina. So I wouldn't program more than 3 works for your first year band, 3 in a row specifically. And with the program notes, use the kids to share them. The idea is the parents are there to see what the students have learned all year. Okay, I signed my kid up to learn an instrument for the very first time. Kind of sounds like noise at times to their ear. What did they actually learn? And then they come to this concert. So let the kids be the ones to present that program information. So it also kind of gives those kids that time to get that quick sip of water. Maybe they have a water bottle at their chair. I've been telling my kids now when we've had concerts the last few years, bring a water bottle because also the air's shut off in the room we're performing in, so it's just hot. They're going to need that water. And it kind of how it allows them to sort of recollect themselves, get ready for the next piece, because for some of them, it's their first performance. Your higher level elementary groups, they're going to be able to maybe play 4 to 5 pieces, but that's because they've got that extra year of experience, so they know what to expect. But don't go overboard by loading too many pieces on them. I think the first couple of years I taught elementary, one of the schools I was placed at, the concert packet was about 8 pieces, and I was a little shocked, that my students were going to be playing that many songs, because like after 1 or 2 pieces, they were tired, like when we would practice them in class. So I was happy to see the packet shrink after a year or two. And then when I wasn't there anymore, I kept it like 3 for the beginners, maybe 4 to 5 for my second year kids. One thing you can consider with, and I'll just go to the program now to kind of show you, have a grand finale. Combine the groups together. Let them play the song one piece together. And kind of mentioned earlier, you're going to be probably like in the school gym or the school cafeteria, so it kind of allows you to sort of group, they'll all already be in the same room. Or if your school kind of has the funds and is able to pay the tech person to keep the lights on in the high school auditorium, you've got the stage space. That group's going to be big enough to fit and do a song where everyone can kind of meet together. Or if you teach band and orchestra and you've got a piece that fits for that, that's where that grand finale can kind of come in. I guess other considerations is just kind of looking at the different parts. Many instruments, they're doubling other parts. Like typically like flute and trumpet might be, sharing the melody. Clarinets kind of have like, sometimes melody, sometimes counter melody. Saxophone can either go like counter melody or even more towards that low brass, low woodwind sound. One of my songs here, I actually did Flight of the Banshee. I did one of the first years I taught elementary, and I actually did without a percussion section because I just didn't have one. So your instrumentation will not be perfect in elementary. It's their first years playing an instrument. You're just trying to get kids signed up and an instrument in their hands. So you might have an army of 20 flutes and like 2 trombones. So you make it work. All right, so to kind of talk about each song, so like my first year group, you can kind of see is programmed here in the left-hand side. So like kind of just, I've got Popcorn Prelude by Mike Hannicle, Flight of the Banshee by Roland Barrett, and Creatures in the Attic by Brian Balmages, or Maryland composer. It's just to sort of give them some kind of easy things, just to sort of give you an idea. Most of these songs, definitely for the first year players, you might only be focusing on the first like 5 or 6 notes that they've learned in the book. So here's to kind of give you that. Start with Popcorn Prelude. Prelude being that opening piece. So we'll take a listen. So here's the opener. The idea behind this one is like every section's gonna get a feature, so like the kids are gonna like pop up during their feature like popcorn to sort of play their thing, and then they'll sit back down. So it's got kind of some actions for them to help with the jitters. The next piece, Flight of the Banshee, is going to include kind of a concert D flat, which they typically learn in their second year of study with me, but it's an easy enough note to sort of just add to their vocabulary. So here's the next song, starts with a little percussion. And some of those like percussion hits, because I said, oh, I've done this without a percussion section. Just turned it into like foot stomps and claps and like body percussion things that the wind players could sub in. And then this band will end with like Creatures in the Attic. Again, it's going to kind of have that like what's lurking around the corner sort of feel, since we're going to be like halfway through the concert for them. just to sort of, again, give you an idea of each piece. Second year kids, kind of a little bit more of a variety. So they've got something that is meant to start the beginning of a concert, Great Beginnings by colleague Mike Kamoff, for beginning players. And then we're going to go into kind of some familiar territory with Shenandoah. So I'll get those two queued up for you. So we'll start with a little Great Beginnings. And then going into Shenandoah, I think we're all kind of familiar with this American folk song. And they learn a lot about folk songs in fourth and fifth grade, connecting back to social studies. And then to kind of give them some other like cultural type items to sort of, break it up a little bit more out of like sort of those traditional band songs or kind of the out of the box sort of sounds. We've got Ritual Dance by Michael Story, so they kind of get to feature with him twice, as well as Battle of the Samurai. So kind of Ritual Dance, again, to give them something kind of cultural to connect to. Good way to sort of follow up something that's a little bit more slow and lyrical. And then Battle of the Samurai is going to give them that quirky piece where they can have sort of like, they get to shout, there's like clashing sword sounds, they get to like hit their pencils on the stand. Gotta give them the fun stuff. There's even fun stuff at the higher grade levels, but we'll stick it with the elementary kids for now. Sorry, we're not going to get to for the presentation purposes, the hayas and the sword battle. And then, like I said, kind of do like a grand finale. So we end with like one big piece that both groups, so your beginners now have had time to catch themselves, get their breath. Advanced kids will probably be able to push through. And for some reason, I can't get this link to open. Uh-oh. All right, we're going to just go copy paste style and see what happens. Sorry about that. Oh, there we go. Just to kind of talk about when you're doing something combined, your beginning group, your first year group's probably going to be all on the second parts, or, keep that in mind. There may be some new notes you're going to have to teach them that they didn't learn for the year. You're probably going to put your advanced groups on the first parts if they're split parts. So just some other considerations to keep in mind. So like I said earlier, the considerations, have the kids speak the program notes, or even if you want to share the composer notes as well. I kind of had the program notes with the piece, put the composer notes separately. All right, moving on to more secondary type programming. Middle and high school bands, there's going to be a lot, I think, of similar approaches programming for those performance groups, you're going to have about 2 to 3 performance ensembles for band. That's typically how it's structured here in Montgomery County. Most some middle schools have 3 bands, some only have 2, and then so it kind of gets like, that beginner band is going to be kind of like a mix of mostly 6th graders, some 7th and 8th graders who started, late or needed that extra year. And then you've got your more advanced group. That's probably the one you're taking to, competition festivals and when there's trips again, on the traveling trips. And then kind of similar idea with the high school groups a little bit. Keep in mind your lower level groups are probably going to need to play easy graded music compared to your higher level groups. In terms of stamina, obviously the stamina is going to grow. So your middle school groups, now they're meeting 45 minutes like every day, 5 days a week, or if you're on like a block schedule, A day, B day, they're in there for 90 minutes with you. So you've got that chance to really build the stamina. So you can kind of, program 3 to 4 pieces, a little bit longer in length than what they did in elementary school. Biggest consideration, programming just needs to be a variety of music to keep the interest of all students engaged. This is like that time where the kid's going to stick with it, through the rest of middle school and into high school, or I think it was kind of reported when I was in my undergrad, 7th grade's around that time where they start really thinking of dropping again out of music classes in general, if they're in a performance ensemble. So engaging interest is a big thing. And kind of look into like the responding to music, one of our new national standards. Get the kids involved. Like, do you have some pre-selected songs or pieces that you're not sure about? Present it to the kids. Give them a Google form. Have them rate the songs, think considerations. I even did it once with the elementary kids with just one song, just to kind of gauge, like, can we do this piece for our orchestra? And that's how I kind of ended up putting it in the program. That's the elementary one. Let's go middle school. All right, so I kind of stayed in the grade 2 territory for this one, but here now we've got more flexibility to go like low end of grade 2 and that higher end. So you might want to throw something in there again that's period piece like, and then sort of mix it up a little. I wanted to also make sure I wasn't like putting songs that are of similar cultural background like back to back. So keeping that in mind as well. So group 1, I've kind of got starting with the march the March from Symphony Number 2 from the Little Russian Symphony. I did that one in youth orchestra, actually. So sort of get the program started, then get into something a little bit more driving with Michael Orr's, and I apologize if I mispronounced this, with Cyclone. Okay, so now we give them something they're probably going to be really engaged about. All right, and then finally ending this selection with Fanfare from the Third Planet, or For the Third Planet. I kept typing it in wrong when I went to search it. So definitely putting some of the more complex pieces towards the end of the program, kind of like that, this is the celebration and ending of what we did. All right, and then same kind of idea going into the second middle school group. So we're going to start with the Del Borgo English Folk Suite, sort of to give them that period piece more to start with as opposed to the traditional march or prelude. And again, your higher level group does not necessarily need to start with something like right in their technical range. It can be down a step. It should be treated, in that sense of like a warm up. And you can do that for kind of like those competition level festivals, go down a grade for the warm up and then stick to the grade level you want for the rest of the concert. All right, going on to the next song, Rainforest Rhapsody, which actually I saw my high school that I graduated from on YouTube doing it, the symphonic band, which was the highest group.
Rainforest Rhapsody, Paul Jennings.
Also there to provide some contrast from, played something English, now let's go something Latin. Then we're going to go into, seconds out. And this here, like, kind of looking at some of the program notes, how it's kind of talking about like boxing terms, kind of getting the kids into the story of behind each piece, having them know what the program notes are about. How are they going to apply those emotions into the piece? Alright, and then finally kind of adding something with like big flare. So we're going to end with Aztec Fire. Here we go. Now I got the hang of it. Alright, so made sure that the Latin pieces, if you're going to do more than one like that, where they're sort of similar, try to plug something in between them so it's not all, unless the theme is supposed to be all Latin. All right, moving on. Excuse me. Okay, so again, composer notes I sort of just stuck on a separate page. And again, for middle school, you could also have the students read out loud the program notes. I actually, before my dad retired, they started incorporating, my dad and his co-teacher started incorporating where the students came up with flashcards to read out loud the program notes. So you can certainly do that at any level. It doesn't need to be restricted to just the younger level. But with elementary, so middle schoolers are also, capable of this. Maybe for high school, providing it in the program is a little bit more expected at that point, but you could also do it with your high schoolers as well. To kind of get more into high school music just a little bit, I don't think all high school programs are able to play beyond grade 4 music. I was kind of in a unique situation with my high school where, because the middle school that feeds us, that fed the one I went to, took a dip due to a change in middle school teacher, it can have a big impact on your high school program. So we kind of I was at the start of a rebuilding period. So your high school groups may be sticking to grade 3 and at the extreme, the grade 4 range. Some could do grade 5 and grade 6. I'm not saying it's completely out of the question. There are some high schools in my area. They're kind of known as the W schools in Bethesda and Potomac. Kind of where all the sort of more the mansions are, just to give you an idea of demographics. And I teach at a feeder elementary for one of those W schools. They do grade 5 and grade 6 often. But most will probably not. So I kind of kept that in mind as I made my program for high school groups. Just kind of some more considerations, I guess, as we go into the program here. Like overall, just be kind and keep the music within the capabilities of your students, but be willing to push them to that extreme if possible. So like if you think they can stretch grade 4 plus into that grade 5 territory, go for it. Don't be afraid of it. Not everything needs to be in their intended grade level of difficulty. And yeah, attempt a hard piece while respecting their technical limits. Or kind of as it's been discussed in the lecture notes, like some things might be listed as a grade 2, but considering some of the more technical things that need to be applied could become a grade 4. So it's really subjective on how you play it. Don't be afraid to push the limits of the serious side. So like, if you've got something that's a little bit more lyrical, but they're saying, oh, from a technical standpoint, it's a grade 2. But when you kind of like really get into it, it's like, oh no, this could be more like a grade 4, grade 5. Go for it. And just like, you can go outside the box it came up more in a discussion with my dad about percussion ensemble. Like he'd see some things. I would be performing with the percussion ensemble at Hofstra, and then he took it once he was retired and was coaching more for one of the local high schools. And it's like they're playing a piece with paper bags. What is going on? So don't be afraid to kind of get out of that box, or like, at the high school level, they're going to be doing pieces where they are also banging their pencils on music stands rhythmically, kind of like the elementary schoolers. Actually, we did it with the Maryland Band Directors Band, where one of the high school directors in our county got up on the stand. I don't remember the piece. I just remember I stood there with the whip and clapped it for a while. It was fun. It was actually in the last concert I played before this pandemic happened. All right, so this one, it kind of split the programming evenly down the middle since we only had to work with 6 pieces. Keep that in mind. And your time, probably timing-wise, these pieces are going to be longer, so you maybe don't want to overload with too many. So I'm going to kind of start with Anthem for Winds and Percussion because it kind of it is a starter piece. And it looks like I forgot to put in the media for it. Great, I'm gonna stop the screen share for a moment to get it pulled up. Or pause this recording. And back on. All right, thanks for your patience. Okay, so hide this. All right, so now we can take a listen to the opener, Anthem for Winds and Percussion. It's basic. It's kind of simplistic to start with, and then sort of to change pace, kind of give them something different, but also to break up the two, like focused on the winds and rhythmic pieces. We're going to go more lyrical with the fantasy on a Japanese folk song. When I kind of listened to this going over or making our grade level list, I was like, I had to play something lyrical as a percussionist. I want this piece. then finally we're going to go into Rhythm of the Winds just to kind of change that, flip the mood back. This one's a little bit more rhythmic based, so you've got like a clear focus with this one being more rhythm based. All right, and then getting into the next few, or the next three pieces. So this one, the high school second group, that one's going to be your more advanced group, kind of like how I've structured the other programs. So they're getting a little bit more of the original hard works. So we're going to kind of start with the American Salute, when Johnny comes marching home. Then go into Says Udgy. Finally got the pronunciation for it, by, again, my colleague Mike Kamoff, to sort of break up the classical nature of the program to give them something a little bit more interest, and then ending with something that's more of a grand finale, being the Pines of Rome and the finale movement. All right, so here's the American Suite, Morton Gould. This one's an arrangement. Surprising fact, he wrote the band version with he wrote this in less than 24 hours for orchestra and then immediately transcribed it for band. So I thought that was pretty awesome. My dad will note that the timpani solo in the middle of this arrangement does get cut out, where the timpani gets to go. And as you can see, we're a very timpani crazy household. There's at least 7 behind me, and next to me right now we got a few more hiding. So you could add the timpani solo back in if you want. Then going to Syzygy. Let's get Celestial. Unless you want to go Holst Planets. Another way to do it. A little bit more modern here. And then finally, kind of big giant crescendo all the way to the end. Your gong player might look like they're practicing their golf swing to get that ending. If they're into golf, or if they're like me who's played the gong part, maybe not so much. And again, even though this particular arrangement, you can see it's marked grade 3. I mean, you're working on a humongous dynamic contrast throughout the whole thing, going from what we could barely hear right now through the computer to let's get real crazy loud. So you you might think from a technical aspect or a subjective point, maybe grade 3 might be generous. And then, because there is so much with the composers here, kind of just split them into 2 pages. Last thing I guess I have to say about programming. Elementary, I don't even list the kids in the program. So that's why I sort of go the oral route with sharing the program notes. Middle school, I can also see why you would do that, but high school, definitely you've got the printing capabilities in the room to fit not only the student names and their sections and all that in the program, but even providing this composer and arranger information. And that's all. I'm gonna remember where I put. There we go. And that's all I have to share on programming, and it's been nice taking this class with everyone. So thank you. I'm going to end my presentation here. Oh, almost ended the Zoom meeting. All right, stopping the recording.